Once again, you've reached the real dirt. On today's dirt, I have some very special guests, Ted Mateja and Gunter Hurd. Today we're going to be talking about the international cannabis marketplace. Most of you that listen to these episodes, you're from America, you're from North America. Even though we have a large European contingent, lots of people from the Netherlands, from South America, from Great Britain listen to this show, and many of you are going to find this episode really interesting. Ted and Gunter are both involved in some large cannabis operations in Europe and South America, and this is going to be a slightly different aspect on this show than we've had in the past. Ted, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks, Chip. Yeah, man, we've been working on some projects internationally, coming out of the American market, focused between Europe, Latin America. Here lately, I've been quite a bit into Latin America. Spent a lot of time in Colombia, understanding some of the different dynamics for the export market there. We just got the law pushed through in Paraguay. And, the thing with these other countries are they want to engage in this market, and they're set up economically to do it in a very good way. But, coming in there and advising with these countries, the government, the officials, and the companies that are coming in on how to set the market up in the industry where it's sustainable long term, but also building the facilities, production from manufacturing and export in such a way you're dealing with some really high standards and Q&A, which is a very integral part to get it into the international marketplace and distribute and export out through GMP, GACP type standards. It's a human consumption product, and it's medical. So building these facilities and infrastructure behind it that is highly regulated, you're able to be accepted into these high-end markets as somewhere like Europe or Asia per se, and eventually one day maybe importing into the U.S. as the future laws open up and the regulations change.
Now, so we all think of modern cannabis and ganja being U.S. Oriented, but things are going on all over the world. And Gunter here is he works with a very large facility in Denmark. Tell us what's going on in Denmark.
Well, in the start of 2018, we got a really, really good group together, went ahead and got one of the first licenses in Denmark, built out a 31,000 square foot GMP-focused facility, a beautiful facility, ran like a top during my tenure there, and we had a really good time doing it. It was a really educational experience for all of us involved, and we learned a lot about the European and international cannabis marketplace in the process.
So 250,000 square feet?
32,000 square feet.
32,000 square feet, and this is an indoor facility?
This is all indoor. Yeah, that's my specialty is indoor cultivation.
All right, and Gunter, you're awful young. I'm not discriminating against anyone over their age, but I don't know, what are you, 15?
12 and a half and growing.
No, you're 27, 28 years old, right?
I'm 26, actually. Yeah.
26 years old. Gunter has been growing in a 32,000 square foot facility in Denmark that's GMP focused. Now, most people what they know about growing cannabis is growing some clones or seeds in the dirt, but a GMP focused facility. Explain to us what that is.
The GMP side of things, it's mainly quality assurance, mainly quality management. And what that means is we have to be very, very strict on our paperwork, very, very strict on our processes, our SOPs. We have to make sure that everything, and when I say everything, I mean everything, is documented. From the source of our inputs, from the businesses that we do business with, they have to be GMP certified as well. It's a very strenuous process, but I think that the benefit of getting a GMP certification within a cannabis business is endless.
So, when you say you have to document everything, it like seed to sale documentation or
Everything.
everything. So, let's have an example. What type of medium are you growing? Are you guys
Cocoa.
You guys growing in cocoa? Okay. So your cocoa supplier has to be a GMP cocoa supplier.
Now, I didn't get that far with it. I believe in the future that's probably going to have to, be something that we're going to look forward to seeing in a GMP setting. But no, I imported my cocoa from America. Being in a new country, more or less doing something in that country that most people have never thought about doing. They don't have a lot of products available for you as a cannabis grower, believe it or not.
But the Netherlands is right next door.
The Netherlands is right next door. You're absolutely right with that. But Denmark has probably the strictest import-export laws as far as agricultural products. For instance, I can't even import microbes into Denmark.
You can import microbes.
No.
Well, actually, that's not uncommon in the U.S. There's even still regulations on that type of stuff because people feel it could be like chemical warfare or biological agents, and
Right.
it kind of is. It kind of is, right? But it's towards the soil or the plants.
Absolutely. It's just a list of challenges that you have to go through setting up in a new environment.
Now, are you just producing a flower? Are you vertically integrated? Do you grow seed to extract?
So the way Denmark has their cannabis pilot program set up, it's a lot similar to our pharmaceutical industry here. Product gets grown, product gets manufactured into cannabis intermediates, and product goes directly to pharmacies, where doctors have to prescribe directly to patients. They go pick it up. The government even covers about half of it, I believe, they're fighting to get more of that covered. So the government is actually paying for their weed. It's a really, really nice thing.
Shoot, that's great. So it's flower. They're getting flower from the dispensary or extract?
Right now, you're not seeing a lot of dried GMP flower products in Europe. So the focus with most of the companies out in Denmark is tablets, oils, tinctures, things of that sort derived from flower. But yes, flower will be rolling out. That's obviously the end goal, moving flower around all the European countries and in and out of Canada, things like that. But you're just not seeing a whole lot of it yet because the process is so strenuous.
So are the laws there, you're able to export it to other countries?
Once you achieve that GMP certification, yes. You can export it to all EU countries and any other countries that has a medical footprint that will allow you to import high THC or CBD products.
Ted, now you were one of the first people that spoke to me about GMP and ISO certification for grows. Most people just have talked about them for extraction and processing facilities. Man, tell me and the listeners what this really means, what it stands for.
Well, as far as the GHCP and GMP, it's really a set of standards all the way, and it can test where Gunter on the cultivation side. It goes all the way down to how your air conditioner units are wired and hooked up, how your failure rate, and what are your processes. And
absolutely, and data logging. Data logging is huge. Every piece of data has to go into that batch record. If your AC variant is a half a degree Celsius, it's got to be logged in there, and it's got to be able to go back and see. Okay, well, on October 18th at 9 a.m., we had a 5% variance in the air conditioning or the HVAC, which caused our environment to do this. This change in the environment is going to cause this change on the product, and it's that strenuous. We have to chase everything down like that.
But man, it's just a weed, man. Shouldn't it just grow free?
Yeah, it grows itself, right? That's what I keep hearing. I just don't know why we spend all the time in these gardens if the plant just grows itself.
And you look at it like it is just a weed, and I agree. Like Chip, you and I, we go way back on this in this industry. But as you've seen it grow, and a lot of us growers kind of didn't see the need for this per se, and not really was against it. But over the years, and you go into, you see large companies taking into this industry, and you see what's going on in the news right now where people are dying from vaping, and it's traditionally coming from the black market. When you have all these procedures and fail safes in way, which is GMP and your Q&A and those type, you're able to alleviate where where air goes. So we always there's no variation at the end product. The consistency is all the same. And when you're looking at a consumer product that's going into somebody, where they're digesting it, inhaling it, in any way it's going into the body, there's checks and balances in place from every food product in the world. There's checks and balances, and these types of things in this industry are actually advancing us. And
I agree.
It's advancing. We fought it for years, but it's actually a really good thing for the industry.
The end goal of all of it is to make sure that the consumer has a 100% consistent product every single time they go to pick it up.
So, are potato chips made in GMP facilities?
Oh, I'm sure they've got some kind of testing that come into for sure.
No, I was just trying to bring up the point that, but we're not. But food isn't regulated in this manner.
I mean, cannabis is more regulated than food. As far as America goes, you go into the EU side of it, their food is quite highly regulated. That's the reason some of our products don't ever make it over there.
Yeah, right. What about other inputs like fertilizers and pest control methods? Like how does
COAs are big. You have to have all of the facilities signed off on by the quality assurance team. It's like I said, guys, it's strenuous. We really got to make sure our paperwork's on point to grab these ISO, GMP, GACP certifications. I'm a little more familiar on the GMP side rather than the GACP side, but I believe a lot of the cultivation will have to move towards that GACP eventually.
Right. So tell me, explain your facility to me, because I'm sure some people are out there are like a little confused. It's like, okay, it's a 32,000 square foot indoor facility that sounds like it's a laboratory.
Yeah, and that's the impression that we make on a lot of people when they see the projects that our group builds. We've got a really, really, really bang up team. Dan, our CEO. For this next project that we're working on, lifelong construction expert. He's built some really, really cool stuff over the years. So we have, people that are cultivation centric. We have people that are construction centric, business centric, and we're able to put together some really, really cool projects because of that. So walking into our facilities, it feels more like you're walking into a doctor's office, Apple Store vibe, clean room facility. You have to gown up and down just to walk in and out of the offices. You've got to make sure all your feet are covered, your hands are covered, your hairs are covered, and that the level of gowning and clean room procedures actually just gets more stringent as you go through the facilities. We try to mitigate any foreign contaminants getting in and out of our environments, and to do that, you have to design the facility a certain way. So when you walk in, I guess that was your question.
Yeah.
What's it like? Well, I like everything white. That's just something that we like to do. We like to make it look really, really clean. Actually, we had the.
I'm all black in my grow room.
Yeah.
So.
I like to be green in mine.
I like green to come out the other end.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's I've got some pictures. I'm sure you can throw them up for everybody to see.
Oh, great. Yeah. Everybody check it out. We'll get some great pictures from you. It'll be on the realdirt.com or on our Instagram, Real Dirt Instagram.
Yeah, I can sit here and describe it to you guys all day, but it's just a big white facility full of a lot of green happy plants. Do
you have multiple flower rooms?
Yeah. We always try to mitigate. I think that running multiple bays mitigates loss. Also helps with labor. Really, really helps with labor. You're able to divide up that harvest, divide up that transplant labor into a manageable team. You can run smaller teams rather than have a huge labor force for 1 day a month.
What's the size of a bay?
And we're growing our base. Ever since we left the Prop 215 market, our base have been just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Right now, the facilities that we've done, they're right around 2,000 square feet, 2,200 square feet. But we're leaning more towards that 5 to 10,000 square foot base size in our future projections.
Mm-hmm. And are you guys on 600 watt lights, 400 watt lights?
No, I run 1,000 watt high pressure sodium bulbs in veg and flower. A lot of guys aren't doing that, but we found through trial and error that we're running less bulbs. Plants are really loving it. We're getting a really fast veg, nice structure, really good internodal spacing, which a lot of guys that, they say, oh, you can't get great internodal spacing on high pressure sodium and veg. We're rocking it. I mean, even stringy OGs, really tight internodals. It's a beautiful thing.
So it's Gavita double-ended lights. That's what you guys are using.
Yeah, we have been running Gavitas in the past. Yeah.
Right. This is common now. It used to be that people had separate lights, separate bulbs for veg, and people still do. But I would say the majority of the people have a small veg that might have special lights, 315s or converted metal halides. And oh man, that's technology going on right now. That's
and
for sure.
I think a lot of that is centric to the end product. You have to remember, there's a lot of different ways to grow this plant. There's a lot of different goals for growing this plant. A lot of people, in certain marketplaces, grow for extracts. Well, a vertical grow, an LED grow, that's amazing for extracts. But if you're looking for quality flowers that the consumer is going to talk about, rave about, that people are going to know, well, I think that the high pressure sodium bulb really is really the winner. I haven't seen. I mean, LEDs have come a very far way, but I just haven't seen a lot of them keep up. And with the structure, the density, the resin production that we're getting out of those high pressure sodium bulbs.
Yeah. LED's the new hot shit for sure. I have more people ask about LEDs and living soil at Cultivate Garden Supply than pretty much any other question right now. But it has its place. It definitely is appropriate technology. But me and Ted were just speaking last week about vertical grows and LEDs, and we spoke to someone who's really interested in putting in like a 50,000 square foot vertical LED grow. And both me and Ted were trying to talk the guy kind of out of it. What are the problems we've seen in the past, Ted, with this LEDs and vertical grows?
When you do these vertical grows, especially on that level and infrastructure with the type of LEDs you need to get that production out, the skill level to run and operate one of those gardens, it's up there, and it's really expensive. It's very difficult to get started.
The setup cost is very expensive.
Yeah, that, and you're talking
those
about
fixtures are just south of $2,000 a piece, right?
Yeah,
you're looking
exactly.
at PhD horticulturalists to really get these things. The trial and error and the learning curve to get it optimal is difficult for people, especially with the cost of what cannabis is today than versus what it used to be. You have to be on top of your game, and when you look into certain places or people talking about it, it really feels like it's a smoke and mirrors, because there's a wow factor. It is beautiful. It looks amazing, and
the efficiency of it, the math of it sounds incredible.
Everything, and if you're not completely bound by like brick and mortar and like energy, it's hard to justify it. I know there's we all want to be green, better for the society. I'm a big proponent of trying to do zero net waste as much as possible. But the output, I mean, I've seen a really nice one in Vegas with, I believe it was a company of Franklin Bioscience. It was amazing, and their outputs were, of something I've never seen.
Incredible.
Off the charts.
Right, when people hit it.
Yeah, but
most people can't hit it.
That's the problem.
Right. Their rooms aren't full all the time. The labor cost for vertical garden is incredible.
The skill level to run it, what was really unique with a couple of them I seen, was the nutrient uptake and how often you were feeding these. And at this one I was in 6x6 rock wool cubes, beautiful, clean, amazing grow. They were watering these things 10 times a day, and I couldn't believe it. And it was because of the nutrient uptake through the LED lights. So when they're on point, they're on point. But it's hard for an everyday user.
I mean, cost per square foot of a vertical garden is it's incredible. It really reminds me of when I was a kid. I wanted a Volkswagen Carmen Ghia, and I got one. Right, and I was looking at all the hot rod VW magazines and talking to my dad about it. And I was like, I want to build a 2,200 cubic inch engine, blah, 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 double carburetors and this and that and the other. And my dad was like, he's a really smart guy. He said, that's for people who are racing these things and they're taking them apart every weekend and, that are really mechanically inclined and they'll run great. You need a daily driver, right? And I didn't quite understand that. So, of course, I tried to build this hot rod, car and it didn't work. And we went back to like single carburetor, a regular gear shifter. And then it was a great daily driver, right?
Yeah. My dad was the same way. I wanted a nice car, and then we'll build it and work on it. When it's broke down, my dad looked at me and he said, "Hey, if you're tired of walking, run. And when you get tired of running, you'll be glad to walk." So at least you had something that was running fine.
Yeah, we do accept that same mentality. As the Carmen Gia, we try to. When we design and build these facilities, we try to make as few moving parts as possible. Because at the end of the day, Ted touched on it a little bit before, downtime is everything. You will bleed out very, very, very rapidly when you have downtime. And if you're not putting fail safes in place in these facilities, you're just doing yourself and your business a disservice. You've got to make sure that if one AC goes down, you have another to run at half speed. Then the lights, make sure that you're keeping everything in photo cycle, and the same goes for a gear shift on a Carmen Gia. The simpler the better. Keep it simple, stupid.
So, you guys, back to the vertical gardening, do you guys do any vertical vegging?
I'm moving towards a lot of that right now. I just left Los Angeles and did a consult in the Valley in West Hollywood, and that's what I designed. I designed the guy a vertical grow for the veg portion. Like I said, I'm pretty loyal to those high pressure sodium bulbs. He's growing for quality smokable flower, dried flower. So I wanted to make sure that he could maximize his flowering space. So I did. Yeah, I have been dabbling with it, actually on other people's dime through the consulting projects that we've been working on, and it's looking really good. It's looking really good.
Vegetative growth vertically
Amazing.
just totally makes sense.
Yeah.
It's really easy to put in.
It's a lot easier and simpler to go at it. Absolutely on that side, but it's difficult on the flower side.
Yeah, harvesting this plant, it's a beautiful process. It's a strenuous process. Imagine that 3 levels up, guys.
Yeah, no doubt. With
also
forklifts or ladder stairs.
I'm falling over cutting colas, guys. I mean, standing on a ladder on that 3rd tier.
It's just not the thing to do. Right.
I mean,
all strains grow differently. And with
Is
with strains growing differently and how different genetics stretch, I mean, obviously you can dial that down to the best of the situation you're going into. But if you want to diversify and keep changing, there's a lot that goes in that vertical side.
Because all the plants don't grow the same, and when you put it into a vertical system, then you have to choose the plants that will grow inside your vertical garden.
But to an extent, you have to do that with high pressure sodium as well. You want to make sure that
absolutely.
that unless you're running a variable bulb height, which a lot of people are. I like less moving parts. We like less moving parts.
And now most of the grows we put together, it's everything. All the lights are mounted at one spot.
Yeah, that's how we like to do it. That's how we like to do it.
That's a lot of the ones I've seen and done the same way. You get a good light of what you need. You get the right distance, and it's stationary.
And more importantly than that, it's the process. You got to make sure that everything is the same start to finish, from your first grow to your last grow. If you have quality product, obviously, if you're lacking in quality, you're lacking in yield, you have to make tweaks. But once you have that process down, you know exactly your plant height, you know exactly your canopy, and your footprint for that light. I don't see any problem mounting them, hard mounting to the roof, to the ceiling, to approved structures.
No, as long as you have enough lights where you get the amplification of light, as long as you do a good light design, and we do those at Cultivate Garden Supply every day for people, it makes sense. If you got one light, raise and lower it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? If you've got 100 lights, spread it out to the maximum possible area that you can. Raise it to the maximum possible area you can. And I know many people are going to tell us about the huge colas they get when they drop their lights down on top of it, and that's totally true. Yeah. But wow, it's really easier if you got 100 lights. Yeah. Not to do that.
Yeah, the old the Lumi loops. I remember the Lumi pulleys, Lumi
Oh
levers.
God, dude! Some of those, the first generation of that stuff was just awful.
Pulling up and down once a week in flour, all the time in veg. I don't miss those days, but there's a lot of truth to that. But we have to move on. We have to evolve. We have to get bigger and better. And the lowering and raising the lights. I think it's going to be a thing of the past here shortly. They have a lot of guys are running winches and electronic stuff, but.
I've seen incredible innovations over it, right? But I don't know. I guess you got to want to do it.
We have a benchmark. We try to keep our canopy between. Our micromole levels are perfect in that margin of error. If we over veg, under veg, obviously that's going to change. Yield will be affected a little bit, but you stay in your margins and run a clean tight ship. You're going to do great.
So let's talk about exporting cannabis internationally.
Sure.
This isn't a new thing. The first cannabis I bought was bricked up Mexican weed, I'm sure, or bricked up Colombian weed back in, probably 1986.
Before I was born.
The weed was so much better than Gunter. Oh, you missed it, bro. We used to buy it bricked up. It was square. It fit in boxes really well. And, you get a little Altoids tin and put an ounce of weed in it.
And it got you like dumb stoned, That's where you could actually smoke it and you just sit on the couch and do nothing. And just stare at the wall.
So let's talk about this fascinating opportunity that's showing up in the world. I mean, Thailand's talking about opening up their borders. Colombia, Paraguay, Chile, Ecuador, throughout South America, Africa. It's going on all over the world. All of the previous ganja centers of the world are now talking about getting back into the ganja business.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're seeing it happen everywhere. I think we're at almost 40 countries in the past 2 years have implemented some sort of marijuana policy. A lot of the stuff is research based, but it's kind of the way that it's your entry level in. We start here, we open up these research licensings with maybe some mild import or export, and then it usually becomes the incumbent for something bigger, which is something we've seen. It's just like the States. It starts here and it slowly progresses into the right way. It's really interesting that, with a country, you don't have to deal, it's federally legal at that point. So you don't have these different lines in between the country and different states or provinces that you have to navigate, that we have to deal with every day into the states. So it sometimes makes it a little easier to get set up and make it move, but you still find the same hurdles because you're going into a new country, it's foreign. Every country has their own policy, own regulation, and how they want to do it. We're still trying to influence or mold these laws in such a way that allows it to open up and where we can export. But you want to set up these, Q&A. That's where these Q&A standards come in, so that other countries that are still cautious about it are able to accept it. So more like EU, Denmark, and stuff.
So, what's brought this international marketplace really is Canada this past year. Canada
Absolutely.
federally legalized cannabis. And one of the things they did was they opened up international importation and exportation of product in Canada. Now, many people thought that immediately Colombia was going to take over all of production of Canadian cannabis. Is that happening yet?
Well, no, Colombia it's a really unique model, and it should be a lot more successful than what it is. But there are some regulatory constraints about how you have to how you have to get your seed and import your seed in, the registration part of getting that registered, and then you have to do a cultivate of it to validify the strain that you grew in before you can expand your production. The second kick to this is quite a few people got into the Colombian market, and what you realize is it's unlimited scalability if you have the product sold before, similar to a commodities. You have to have the product sold a year into advance. Colombia at one point was looking to be the world leader, the single largest exporter, but what we've seen over the past few months is, and don't quote me on the actual acronym, but it's basically the equivalent of the DEA for the UN. And these countries are signed into this UN treaty. Each country has a certain allotment of cannabis, medical cannabis, that they're allowed to export out of the country. Colombia, I believe, was over 40 tons of the past 2 years allowed, but due to the fact that there hasn't been that much product leaving, that number's down to 1 ton this year. So that shifts the model, and that's kind of what you see even in the stock side with some of these bigger companies, and where the stock prices started dropping because they're so heavily invested into the Colombia side, and that made that model. So you do have those hiccups, and it is something that needs to be addressed.
Well, 1 ton, metric ton, that's not that much. You can grow that in your backyard.
Okay, all day long.
Right. Why would someone import that into their country?
Economies of scale, it's cheaper. It's cheaper, the same quality. We're producing, you're able to, I say we, but we're able to produce this in one of the most perfect environments, which is that South America market. I mean, that South American territory with the soil, it's some of the richest soil in the world. You can look this up. You got the perfect lighting schedule. It's agriculture, and you're producing.
Colombia's been growing good weed for a long time.
For sure, absolutely. They just needed the infrastructure behind it. And, going to a lot of countries, you see even their swag weed, it looks good for doing nothing and having no technology and really the real know-how to do it. And if you could just put a basic little infrastructure on it, have them harvest it correctly, because I'm big on that.
Harvest it, store it correctly, package it correctly. Right.
Absolutely. Harvest, dry, and cure.
Yeah. We've all seen beautiful gardens be ruined at that very last week. Pulled a week early, dried in 2 or 3 days, manhandled, just destroyed. Really,
I think it's 95% plus of the quality of cannabis. I mean, the harvest.
No, you're right.
It's just.
We're here in Atlanta, and yesterday I spoke to the Medical Association of Georgia, and that was one of the things people asked. It was like, well, isn't cannabis so much stronger today, and doesn't that make it dangerous? And really the answer to that is no. It's not really stronger today. It's our techniques and technology is just so much better.
Right, we're able to achieve that phenotypical potential out of almost any cultivar that we can get our hands on.
Right. Yeah. Last year we grew some Angolans, Thais, Panamanians, a bunch of landrace stuff, and incredible, man. The longest of the Panamanians were like 24 weeks into flower. It went through 3 different flower cycles to finish out, and it tested at 18%.
It's like smoking in a time machine too.
It is. It is. I mean, it doesn't have the quality of the look. Right, and the back crosses looked incredible. The stuff that was crossed with our modern Kush strains looked incredible.
Well, it doesn't get more stable than that.
Yeah, right. So, but we were actually really surprised at the THC content in it and the CBD content in these land races.
What other kind of cannabinoids were you seeing in the land races?
The test we did was just a CBD, THC, and terpenoid test.
Because that's something that really interests me. I'm curious to see what exactly we've bred out of these babies.
Oh, it's so true, man. We've been working in America and in Europe in such a small gene pool. I mean, in Europe, skunk and Afghan really ruled the breeding market throughout the 80s and 90s. And as breeders and growers, we talk about the European skunk look. And then in the U.S., also for the past 20 years, Kush has really dominated the genetics, man. Oh, I love it, bro.
Big Afghani guy. One of my favorite.
Well, you're from the land of Kush, Florida. Yeah, Florida's the land of Kush.
Triangle Kush, shout out.
Yeah, love the Triangle Kush, and we actually had that cross of the Panamanian and the Angolan and Thai.
Oh.
Yeah, got those land races from Charlie Garcia. I don't know if any of you guys know that guy out there, but great land race source. But it has it makes the diversity difficult to see when it's all Kush or when it's all skunk. But it's changing now.
It is.
Right.
There's a lot of strains out there.
And a lot of fruit and food centric terp profiles that we're going after. And you know, I respect it. I agree with that. But God, there's nothing like a nice bag of freshly cultivated San Fernando Valley OG.
Dude,
Triangle
totally.
Kush.
Oh, man.
I mean, these are the things that I hope everyone out there understands. You know, there's just really nothing like those tried and true genetics.
Man, you know, specifically the San Fernando, the first. I met Josh, Josh in 2002
Josh
in
D
Germany.
is killing it out in California right now.
And
big ups to Josh.
He was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of Kush?" And I was like, "You mean like Hindu Kush?" And he was like, "No, not really." And he broke out this nugget, and it smelled so good, man. Oh my God, I'd never smelled anything quite like that. And so we went back to California, and I immediately tried to get these strains. Right? Nobody at the time was giving this stuff up.
Nobody is ever.
And you know, I would get weed that people would say was Kush, or I got the OG, and we'd grow it, and it just wouldn't have that smell, that flavor. And then I'd run back into Josh or one of his other crews down in LA, and just like, oh my God, this is it, man. I see why people are paying $80 an eighth,
absolutely,
$100 an eighth for it. And then it got out a little bit. Right, and other crosses or other generations of it started to develop, and it did dilute the gene pool quite a bit.
They trace that back to, you know, I don't know if anybody out there knows the whole story with the OG Kush, but OG started as biker weed, and I
Hell's
believe,
Angels OG was one of the first names I heard of it.
And one batch, one cultivator, a surfer. Cultivated a batch, had some seeds in it, and they weren't real happy with them. They said, you know, you're going to move this product, and you're going to get what we asked for it. So I believe that load went out to California, and that's where the San Fernando Valley came from. I believe, and that's where it's called. It's all derivative of that first Kush cross or Kush seed pop that came over and into Florida, I believe.
Man, this kind of touches on this theory I have that cannabis wants to cultivate itself, and cannabis is cultivating us. And you can have the best, most stable variety in the world, and it will occasionally produce a male flower in order to reproduce because it wants to propagate.
Life always finds a way.
Life always finds a way, man. And that like little magical one seed, right? Like from sour diesel or from the OG Kush, like it all came from just one seed. There wasn't a pheno hunt back in 1997, 1992.
No,
it was just like, I got a
cups.
seed and I'm going to plant it.
Yeah.
Right?
I always loved that real old sour diesel, which you can't really, it's hard to find at times. That one,
you know I got it, man.
That one was a good one. That's a really good one. And one of my favorite also, not even going old, out of Colorado, is that Golden Goat. That's always been
not really a Golden Goat fan, but I tell you, I've got several friends that still grow the original diesel back in California.
That noddy, bally structure diesel, baby, yeah.
And it is
sour diesel.
Yes.
It is not a modern strain any longer.
No.
Right?
It doesn't have that atypical structure that you're seeing on a lot of shelves.
Right. It's it's not the most popular thing any longer. In California and Humboldt, like for a while, it was just sour diesel that you could grow and sell. And then it became like OG and sour diesel. And now it's actually fruit and fuel. That's how they describe.
Really?
Yeah. That's
I can see the fuel.
What do you have? Fruit or fuel?
Maybe rotten fruit.
Yeah, fruit or fuel.
Maybe
you got fruit or fuel. Man, just so many people, especially people that aren't heavy smokers, like the fruitier stuff. Yeah. Right, and like I consider myself a heavy smoker. I like fruity weed occasionally. Purple Punch, love the flavor on that, man. Yeah. But its effects might not be as effective.
Right, it's one really, really pretty to look at. I don't think that there's many genetics out there with the trichrome structure that Purple Punch has. I just saw somebody cultivating some online, and it literally looks like somebody rolled it around in keef. And if you're familiar with that purple punch strain, you know that's not the case. It really does grow out that frosty, but it's one of those ones that just looks a lot better than it smokes. I mean,
it's got really high THC content in it, but
it doesn't hit that endocannabinoid system the way an OG does, for whatever reason.
Yeah. It's a great cross. I've been looking for a purple OG cross for years, and it is the best one that we found so far. You have the purple look. It has the purple smell. It grows more like OG. I would prefer to have one that looked purple but smelled OG.
Sure.
Right, and had that super OG high. I know, I've been looking for it, man. If you got it out there, bring it to me. I'm in Oklahoma City these days. We laugh about all that, but I'm telling you, when I say this, and people all over the country and the world, like when they stop me, and because I go to these cannabis events everywhere, and that's the people who are listening to this podcast, and people break out some of the best and worst weed that I've ever seen. Right? Like, when people are like, oh, I've never grown before, or, oh, I've been growing for 20 years, or, oh, I've been growing for 30 years, and here's my, bad weed, or here's my great weed, and this is my first time grow.
What's your go-to excuse when somebody pulls out just some nasty weed?
It's really hard.
I don't mean to out you.
Really
if somebody
hard.
comes up to you, sorry, guys, ahead of time.
Maybe just stare at
I'm not trying to hurt your feelings.
This subject comes up all the time because, I do sell equipment to people, and for years my customers have come up, and I would, because I'm grew up mostly in Humboldt, and people are really critical there, and your buddies are going to just rag your ass if it's not top-notch weed.
Sure.
And the purchasers, they're only going to buy the best, and they're going to look through your sack of weed, and if every nugget doesn't look exactly the same, they're going to be like, oh, there's a leaf there.
Shout out to Santa Cruz Mountains. We are the same way over
there. Right. All throughout the West Coast and Northern California,
Jose,
it's absolutely like that. You
Oakland,
have to have the best weed, and many people don't understand what that is because they're in their own environment, they're smoking their weed, and it is the best weed to them.
Right, and that's the cultivator's gift. You work so hard for that product, and then you get it, and God, no one can tell you it's bad.
Oh man, I had this guy Jason King.
It's your baby.
I don't know if you guys know him. He wrote a couple books or published a couple of books on cannabis several years ago, but he was so proud of this cannabis he had, and he brought some over, and he was just telling me about his living soil and the organic, and man, I smelled it, and it's just like moldy yeast. Right. And, he's so proud of it because he put so much effort into it. And, we got into it a little bit, and I'm like, dude, it smells like yeast and mold. You can't smell that. But his heart was so into it that he could not see past that his OG Kush and his Tangy was brown and rotten because he had put so much effort into it.
It's time too. For 60 to 120 days, depending on how you run, if you're, this is all we think about is our plants as a gardener.
There's a lot of passion that goes behind it.
So much.
But it's, that's what I love what I do is we're able to see so many different facilities or grows, and you can see what everyone's doing. And there's a couple things you could be like, hey, you probably should change that. But it's hard to tell somebody when you put all that passion. It's almost like you have to let them incept the idea. You start here, and then a few weeks later, they're down the road. They're like, "Hey, I just tried this and this out." Mm-hmm. I'm like, "Yeah, great idea." But that's where you want people to grow, and it's not rocket scientists, but it is a lot of time, passion that goes into it.
So back to your question. So here's what happens: somebody comes up with a poor quality, or maybe a C grade weed, because that happens more than not, and it's often new people or private people in the industry, and they bring this weed up, and they're very proud, and they're like, say, "Oh, what do you think about it?" Right? So I look at it, and I immediately ask, I try to find the best thing about it instead of the worst thing, as my California upbringing would say.
Sure.
Right? So I'm like, oh, well, the nugget size looks great, and it looks like this hasn't been packaged and pressed into each other. What were your problems? right? And then that usually opens the door, right? And then I can start talking to them about, because we always spoke about the harvest issues and, the processing issues, and I can start talking to them about that. I've seen so much weed over time, and I know so many of the varieties. I can look at cannabis and tell you how off you were on your harvest times. So we immediately start talking about like, oh, when did you pull it? Right. And I really try to have this, like, this is how you can do it better if you're really into this. Man, on the other aspect, though, you've got the guy who shows up and they sell every single gram of weed they have for $50 an eighth. They are crushing it. All of their customers say, oh, man, I love your weed. 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 And they really get their feelings hurt, right? Because they have so much emotional support and so many people tell them they're great, but when the reality is those people just want to keep getting a sack.
Yes.
Right. It's convenient.
It's convenient. Right. And, throughout Colorado, we see this. And until a couple of years ago, when the market really started to dip, nobody gave a shit. People were like, green trim, dry it as quick as possible, get it out on the shelf, like mechanize it, get it out there. But that became a glut. The market changed a little bit, and people started to improve their quality of weed. And the first thing people started to do to improve the quality of the weed is stop green trimming it, dry the plant, and doing dry trimming, curing the plant. Those were the things that people picked on. And man, that really changed things, because Colorado is king of 64 days. They harvest everything in 64 days. It's 9 weeks, 9 weeks, 9 weeks, 9 weeks, 9 weeks, 9 weeks, 9 weeks. And, I believe that every weed has its time, and sometimes it's 62 days and sometimes it's 70 days.
And that can differ from cycle to cycle.
Cycle to cycle, man.
Sure. Yeah. I'm right there with you.
It's about the holistic journey that the plant has from clone to harvest or seed to harvest, and it's hard to SOP that, even though you have to sometimes. Right. I get it. But
that was my next point.
Even though you have to, but at a 70-day crop, if you can be on it, like you were saying earlier today, you still get 5 pulls a year.
Right.
Most people don't get 5 pulls a year.
No.
Right, no. But at a 70-day crop, you can get 5 pulls a year.
5 pulls, 5.5 pulls, 6 pulls if you're some sort of magician. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah. It's also based around your staff and how you have things dialed in and how you're scaled out.
And this is where our CEO Dan has really, 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 really changed my life. He is an operations guy. Systems are everything. You cannot do anything without a system. And,
it's true.
And really early on in this journey through the cannabis industry, we were in and out a lot of grows, and they're just hanging out. It's wasting time. It's not. There's no system to it. There's no operation to it. When it comes to harvest time, they harvest them different every single time. They dry them different every single time. They grow them different every single time. There's no structure. There's no system. There's no operation. And if you want to be successful on a large scale, there is absolutely no question in my mind. You got to run a schedule. Your schedule's got to be your life. Your system's got to be your life. Your operations have to be your life.
One of the story I tell all the time is I had 2 customers come into our store in 2010 in Colorado. They both had the same amount of money, the same size grow facility, and the same kind of idea. One group, they hired 8 people to run their, I don't know, I'll say it's 100 lights. Right, and the other group hired 2 people to run their 100 lights, and the eight employee company, they wanted to expand and get bigger and have more employees, and they ended up with 40, 50 employees, and the other people, they just kept this 2 employees and multiplied their grow rooms. Right, and so they ended up just crushing it over time, and are some of my favorite stories for sure, because they literally have 180 lights that one guy runs, and then the other 180 lights one other guy runs, right? And that's really efficient,
It is, but I think that there's a big downside to that as far as consistency with the end product.
Oh yeah, those guys have their issues too,
Yeah.
and that's for sure. But one of the things they do for that is they only harvest the best weed for flower, and the rest of it
everything
goes
goes
to
to
extraction.
Sure.
Right, and so their bud looks great most of the time, man.
It's the grower select.
It is, dude. It is.
You know, when you talk about like even the good bud, that's the one lacking part in some of these foreign markets.
Absolutely.
Because the end product, the best weed in America, I mean, the best weed in the world is in America. That's not, I'm not being biased.
You heard it here, folks. Real dirt.
Not
The real
being
dirt, the best
biased.
weed in the world is in America.
It is. And I'm not saying that in other places it won't catch up to this, but it's the infrastructure behind it. And
Well, it's culture too.
culture
I
also.
was just about. I'm really glad you made that point. I was
Yeah,
just about
it's-
to say.
Because in
Exactly.
Europe, people still blend the cannabis
God.
with tobacco.
For
Man,
sure.
I'll tell you what. In
We
Denmark,
smoked a blendo yesterday with an Irish dude.
in Denmark, they
Irish
think
Steve.
that they invented the hash spliff. They call them Danish joints or Danish spliffs, something like that. They are so proud of that. But when it comes down to it, the hash that they're smoking is cut with henna. It's maybe 10% THC.
Or dirt. Right.
It's just, and it's like, that connoisseur culture, I believe, was cultivated in California, Colorado,
Absolutely.
Oregon, Washington, but mainly Colorado and California. It all started in California, I believe. It turned us into weed snobs as an industry.
Absolutely.
Which is really great for the consumer. Really bad for people who don't know how to cultivate. That product essentially, you cultivate a subgrade product, it becomes a paperweight.
And when you look at the extract markets, that's very new outside of the States. I mean, there was a study, I think, in the late 90s that 95+% of all cannabis was consumed via flower, right? And that same study, because that was a global test, but if you look at the U.S. market right now,
It's 50%.
Yeah, it's going down. I know I took some vape cartridges a few years ago to the Swiss Alps skiing, and yeah, I didn't pay for skiing for 3 weeks passing those cartridges out. They have never seen it, and they loved it. I was like, all right.
Europe is hash culture.
It is.
Very, very big hash culture.
So are you guys doing concentrates or extracts there because of that? Has the dabbing market hit Europe?
No, they've never heard of a dab. If
wow.
you did a dab in front of a European,
They would think you're smoking crack.
they would absolutely think that
Absolutely.
you were freebasing some sort of hard drug.
They'd be sitting on the couch for quite a while.
Right,
For sure.
right. And the ones that do know, honestly, are terrified of it because of that same reason. They've hit that couch lock point and that paranoia when they have tried it because they haven't seen anything that strong before, and then that age old question with concentrates comes out right from them. An uneducated consumer, they go, why does it need to be that strong?
And you got to think most product that for what we're doing as far as a company, that's the rec side. It's illicit, right? But we all know it's there. When you're looking at the legal market, the products are distributed through pharmacies.
Right, and you asked,
So it's totally different.
Are they doing extraction in Europe? Yes, they are, but those products are going, the raw extracts are going into intermediate products, at least in the market that I'm familiar. Not edibles yet, from what I'm familiar with. I'm versed in the Danish structure, the Danish pilot program, and I don't see that they will allow edibles for the foreseeable future unless it goes recreational, which there's talk about.
That's funny because, man, edibles are one of the most medicinal aspects of
they're
cannabis.
going towards THCA tablets. There might be some decarboxylated tablets and stuff like that, but it's inhalers. No vape cartridges as we know
It's
them.
more pharmaceutical based, like the API that you need to have on
Cannabis
that.
is grown as a medicine under law, so everything is pharmaceutical centric. From the way it's cultivated all the way to the end product for the consumer.
But the uniqueness on the medical side of that which is something that we should be doing in the States, is the government subsidizing it. Insurances are picking this up.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
Paying for
ganja
it
farmers
for-
need insurance, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw. I don't know if you guys saw on the news, Los Sueños. They're the largest producers in Colorado. They've got a 40-acre outdoor cannabis facility. Lost half of their crop this year because of a freeze.
Oh.
Now, if you're a carrot farmer, if you lose half your crop, you've got insurance on it.
Yeah, there's a few farms that got hit heavy this year. That was kind of freaky snow. But even when I say the insurances are picking up, it's a medical product.
Yeah, he was
Like
talking
the
more about
pharmacies.
healthcare style.
The healthcare
Oh, yeah.
system.
Oh.
We do
subsidizing
have crop
paying for it.
insurance on Europe.
Yo, you've got crop. Well, that's
Yeah.
great, man.
Yeah.
Well, Europe's always been a little bit more progressive on that type of thing.
Yeah, I have to plug Europe right now and really do have to give it to them. They have been really, really good with the legislation. Really good. Like when we first started out in Denmark, of course we didn't know how to even order a sandwich there. I shouldn't say that. They all speak English, but everything's different in a new country. You guys have traveled a bit,
Have you picked up Danish?
No, I downloaded Duolingo for about a day, and then I realized that it was a lost cause. It's an extremely hard language to learn. And I'll put it like this: there's parts of Denmark, Italy's the same way, but there's parts of Denmark where they can barely communicate with each other because their dialect is so different.
So different, yeah, absolutely.
But they learn English so young over their second, third grade. They're pretty much on the road to be fluent, and then fifth, sixth grade they're picking up another language.
I think when you look into these, but when you go into these other governments, is the government's actually really accepting to your help? They're looking for real expertise.
When we put a phone call out, that's where I was going with that. When we put a phone call out to the Danish government, they picked up the phone. We were talking to someone on the third ring.
Yeah, like in these Latin
hey, can
countries.
we do this? Hey, can we do that? How do we structure this? How do we structure that? They were there. But, that I think a lot of that may have come with, having one of the first few licenses. I think we were license number 2 on that project in Denmark.
Sure.
So we basically got a license, and they said, we'll let you know as far as regulation and cultivation and cannabis intermediate products. So, of course, as business people, we're trying to jump the gun and get everything going as fast as possible. So we're on the phone with them all the time, and they were awesome. They picked up.
So let me ask you guys a question here. What is the and this is how I end so many of our shows. What is the future of international cannabis?
Well, the future is trying to legalize every country.
Yeah, I would say the end game for it is that recreational legalization and import export from and to the United States. Let's get everybody that much closer. Let's get good product and good genetics in the hands of capable cultivators and make the world a better place.
Yeah, designing and crafting the regulatory environment behind it and trying to mold the laws with the ideologies of each country and getting it set up in such a way it's sustainable, right? From not so much in a green perspective as a business. It's working. There's tax revenues and there's good things you can do. But at the end of the day, let's just get medicine to patients, because a lot of these governments are very interested into it, but they just need to have their hands held to explain to them with the right people that this isn't going to bring a bad stigma.
Absolutely.
That's the big impression I get when talking about the politics behind cannabis in Europe is they don't want to be the next Canada. They thought they wanted to be the next Canada when they brought all these programs. Then they see the downfall and the problems. I'm not going to mention any companies' names or anything like that. But there's a big one in the news right now, and I mean they've barred all Canadian products from the country of Denmark because of that, and they will for a while until they figure that out.
Getting the bad players out. I mean, I'm not saying that this company is a bad player, but doing it right. They're bringing in illicit stuff into a regulated market. And that's the thing with all these standards and paperwork trail that you actually have to produce this. There's a checks and balances, and they're going to find out about it. And it gives people like us or other companies a bad name when we're trying to get this industry off the ground in the right way.
So how long before we have like true international exportation of cannabis?
Out of the U.S. or into the U.S.?
Into the U.S., out of the U.S., into Canada, out of Canada, into Europe, out of Europe.
I think as far as on a political side, descheduling is going to happen very fast.
Here in the U.S., descheduling is going to happen.
So I'm not going to say the psychoactive part of it will be able to really come in and out, but I do think the medical products, as true like medical, identified products will be able to come in the U.S. fairly soon, probably in the next 5 years, maybe next administration. But the international market, it's coming on heavy for sure. I don't think it'll be recreational.
They're already moving hemp around.
Sure. Oh yeah, yeah, totally.
And with those infrastructures in place, I think it's just going to take a good push for the political side of things. I think that's all we really need over there is one or two really good pushes. and open up those floodgates.
Having the FDA and USDA start writing the laws that they're working on right now because this emerging CBD market that's going on is going to help push a lot. And the descheduling and getting this banking bill passed, it's going to open quick. Once that point happens, you're going to see a lot of movement.
So does this mean in the U.S. that big business is taking over? Do you see a place for the small farmer, the small producer?
I think it goes both ways on that. Big business is already taken over in America. I mean, you're seeing
That's what America's about.
Yeah, it's something I struggle with because I see both sides of it, and having a small business in that at one time, you see it, but there will always be that niche for it. Like even as the flower market kind of drops down and you got these ancillary products or extracts or whatever you do, you're gonna have that small, I don't want to say boutique because that can still be big by relative terms, but you're going to have those individual growers that are doing exactly what they do in such a way it's going to be hard to produce. Kind of like your microbrewery style. You're not going to see that operate on the international side for a long time.
Yeah, the craft cannabis market is not going to be there in Europe for a while, I don't think.
The American market's going to stay very unique for that, and I mean it's a good. That's what we're proud of. We've done it. We've been all these genetics and strains. This is so unique what we have over here.
America.
But it's very different than what's going to happen.
But on the flip side, we can bring a lot of that over there, and that's where a lot of our value lies, I believe. And that was our team's first thing in Denmark. Yes, we were going to be the first ones out there. We built the largest facility in the country at the time. I think there's some bigger ones out there now. And everyone else was focused on getting as much product out the door as they could and getting it to market first. And we were pretty quick on that as well. But our main focus was that quality, that NorCal style technique of growing that we've grown to know and love as cannabis consumers. That's our big thing. We want to bring that over there.
Bring in the real expertise, and I mean, there's a lot of good growers all over the world. And I say expertise, bringing our ideas, which is different, from
Totally.
some of the stuff they've stayed on, because we're fortunate in people like you, Chip, and Gunter, we're able to see so many different situations that you're able to adapt and craft ideas and tailor them for each individual person. And that could be a 5-minute conversation. It could be working with you for a little bit, but your ideas and ideology change. It's just good to learn from other people too, because you can learn some pretty cool ideas when you see the simplicity of what they've done outside.
No, absolutely, man. We're all different, man. It's just a huge, crazy world we live in. Cultures are different. Our perceptions are different. And different markets are going to require different cannabis and different cannabis products because of all that. I'm really surprised to hear that the concentrate culture hasn't taken off in Europe, because previously in the U.S. there wasn't a hash culture. It was just a flower culture. And, before that it was just a hash culture. But it's changing. Like you said earlier, 50% of the people are it's just always really remarkable at what people want out of cannabis, whether it's concentrate or whether it's flower, whether it's a joint or whether it's a dab or whether it's an edible or a gummy or an extract. And it's all just the different cultures, and we're all physically different too as humans as well, and it reacts different to our bodies.
Yeah, there's something out there for everyone. Absolutely.
Well, hey, I really appreciate both you guys stopping by on this rainy Atlanta morning. Thank you for giving me your Saturday morning. Gunter, I really hope we get to chat more about Denmark and cannabis in Europe. And Ted, you always have fascinating stuff going on internationally, and I know we got some stuff to talk about the U.S. coming soon. But thanks both you guys for.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chip. It's always good hanging out with you.
Thanks, Chip.
And thank you for listening to the Real Dirt Podcast. If you like this episode or others, download them on iTunes or Spotify. We are the Real Dirt Podcast. You can also look us up on therealdirt.com. Stay high. So at the beginning of the episode, I was talking about some of the cool stuff my friends at Left Coast Wholesale have been working on. And I wanted to specifically talk about a new nutrient product they have called GeoFlora. I was really surprised when I talked to the guys over there and they explained how simple this new GeoFlora line is. There's a lot of expensive and high-end synthetic nutrients out there that work really well, but this is a great organic way to do it. I'm telling you, man, this GeoFlora line is just really high quality. Stay high.